Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the chaos that is cybersecurity. Kayla and I were just over in Dallas yesterday at the CISO Society event. It was absolutely fabulous. If you guys ever have a chance to check out one of those events, their anti-summit is top tier. So with that, welcome to Criticality Live, presented by our partner, Secure Nation, where we should cut through the noise and challenge the assumptions and talk about, honestly, what the state of cybersecurity is. Let's jump straight into it with our headline guest. Human risk is kind of at the front line of cybersecurity, and few people understand that battlefield better than Matt Lindley. As a leader shaping how organizations tackle behavioral, cultural, and the human side of security, Matt focuses on the variable attackers exploit most: people. Today, we're going to dive into why awareness alone fails, how culture drives risk, and what it really takes to build security that works in the real world. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Joshua, Kayla. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, happy to have you on. So we like to start kind of at the beginning. So every operator leader has a beginning, not the polished version that you keep on your LinkedIn bio or your keynote presentation. So the real story, the real signal, the hard pivots, the moments when we experience rewired perspectives before we had all the fancy titles and before the frameworks and all that good stuff. So let's rewind to kind of the beginning. Tell me about the first time you had a meaningful encounter with technology, security, and risk, and what got you curious about this space in the first place?
I've always been interested and even sometimes obsessed with technology and understanding technology, and I think just that curiosity is what ultimately led me into this field, and it really started. Probably after high school, I was in college, focused on my, computer information systems and cybersecurity focused degree. And through that, I was working on a project. And at this time, this is the early 2000s to date me. Uh, I got super interested in wireless technology, right? It was just kind of becoming more prolific in businesses, and one of the things that I found interesting is no one was really talking about the security side of wireless. And so just as I explored that technology more and more, I went out and bought some omnidirectional antennas. Started experimenting with AirSnort, right, which was an open source tool at the time to be able to detect wireless networks and understand, are they encrypted, are they not, among other things. At this time, I was living in Southern California, and I drove probably about 30 miles down the I-5 corridor from about Anaheim to South Orange County, and was just picking up wireless networks, just to see like how many businesses are using them along the I-5 corridor. There's just tons of businesses packed along that area. And again, early 2000s, I think I found about 150 wireless networks, and of those 150 wireless networks, less than 50 were encrypted. And so, to me, this was like an aha moment. Education was a huge component of this, right? Wireless is new. Let's go out, buy a Linksys router at Best Buy and install it in the business. And now all of a sudden we're mobile. But there's a lot more that, goes along with that. And so this was the start of my first entrepreneurship. Tagged a friend in. We printed out some flyers and went around just posting flyers around businesses talking about the risks of unencrypted wireless networks. We started getting calls and started a computer consulting business. And so that was the real, I think, paradigm shift from this is something I'm really interested in into this is something that I really want to do as a career.
That is actually such a cool story. Like, I would have not been able to have stopped and gone in and be like, do you know how exposed you are? Just in keeping your composure there.
Yeah,
is
we want to try and keep it, not like, hey, we know you have a wireless network, because we didn't. We weren't like triangulating, and this business has one, this business.
Yeah,
It was more of a wide net, right? Do you have a
yeah.
wireless network and stuff like that? But it worked out.
Yeah, that's really cool because you're right, at the turning point of the technology. You were getting in there before everybody else, and it just was by happenstance. I think that's a really cool. So because we're seeing that now, right? We're seeing a lot of that with AI technology. We're
Absolutely.
on that precipice of something that's coming, and you can see that kind of arms race starting to happen now. Um, so before cybersecurity, you had a variety of roles, including GRC leadership and obviously your consulting here. So how did those early experiences shape your approach to people-centric risk?
I think it was a lot on the consulting side, just gaining experience working with businesses of all different shapes and sizes. Spent a lot of time in the managed services and managed security services space. Specifically working with our clients, anywhere from medium small businesses to small medium sized businesses,
Yeah.
and then a handful of enterprise businesses that were very specially focused, and really understanding their unique challenges, right? Kind of
Mhm.
learning about what makes their business tick, what the old saying, keeps them up at night. And although there's a lot of similarities, there's also a lot of nuance in, number one, how the culture tends to drive those things.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of great experience. And then the second piece to that, I think, was spending time both on the proactive side of cybersecurity and then the reactive side. And as we get into the reactive side of cybersecurity post incident, and understanding exactly what happened, there's so much human psychology that is involved in that,
Yeah.
and of course culture and the impact, and even what it does to humans when they are a victim in this. And
Yeah.
you going through that and seeing that, you're like, it's um, it's tough to watch people go through that experience. And I'll even raise my hand. I've been through minor, security incidents myself. It is not fun, right? Even being an expert. And if there's time, we can share that story. It was a COVID quick buy while things were limited, that I got scammed
Mhm.
out of my money because it was a
Oh,
urgency based deal. But anyways, so yeah, I think those elements in my career really kind of led me to where I'm at now, which is that focus on the social engineering, the human psychology, the human risk side of it, which felt like needed to really be that target. And then that led me into really trying to understand more, like, how bad actors are winning, right? Why they're winning, what are they doing, what is their mindset, what techniques are they using, and how can we balance that out on the education side to be more and more effective.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally enjoy the fact you brought up the human reaction to those things. So, with that, is there a moment or a specific incident or failure that you've seen that made you realize that our traditional security approaches was missing something essential about human behavior and the human element?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's probably a handful. I can probably talk about a few that maybe stand out just because of the size and scope of the impact. Where at one post incident I was involved in, it was a executive who, during a international trip, was using wireless access points that were compromised, and that combined with weak password and no two-factor authentication, account got compromised. Bad actor was in this individual's email for about 6 months until they found the perfect opportunity, which was a $10 million wire transfer that this individual was working on. Got into some rerouting, social engineering, communication, as right, when you look at your career and you think back about certain things, and this is a long time ago, right, when there was probably a pretty decent lack of cybersecurity education, and certainly for this particular organization, and it's there's a lack of prepping employees properly, and but at the same time, as an employee, you feel this innate sense of responsibility, right, to protect the organization, and so it's tough. And I think when we go through these experiences, and again think about how we can mitigate that from the ground up, and it's almost less about the technical side of cybersecurity, in my opinion, and more about the skepticism side, or the emotional side of it, right? Which really is what kind of fascinated me, and why I ultimately joined Ningio in 2019. Because I saw at 2019, cybersecurity awareness training, when you kind of look at how it was being deployed, it was traditionally, lecture based, PowerPoint, 45-minute annually. And when I came across, Ningio and their CEO, I saw this is different, right? And what Ningio does is Hollywood-based storytelling, micro-learning, 5 minutes long, focused on simple, teachable moments, using professional and celebrity voice actors to really draw on that engagement. And through storytelling, developing episodic memories, and creating emotional attachment to that lesson. I just saw this shift in how cybersecurity could be done right. And so, with that, I think those were the big moments where one, definitely a misaligned view on what security awareness should be early on, as it relates to how people learn. And then this, aha moment when I saw, wow, this is really interesting. This might work.
Yeah. So then would you consider that, I guess, the point where you saw this, like, the ability to move organizations beyond just those compliance check boxes to like that real behavioral change? Or do you still think there's room for improvement there, I guess, room to grow?
Yeah. And it's like security, right? Defense in depth. It's always multifaceted, and in each layer, there's multiple layers beyond that, and it does get complex. And I think what's been interesting to see, at least in the security awareness space, how that's evolved into more of a, from first traditionally like, hey, let's fix the training, let's do better with phishing simulations and understanding how users are interacting with that, to more of a comprehensive approach. Let's understand how security awareness training plays a part in the all the security telemetry, right? And then that's when we get into HRM, human risk management, and ROI tracking, and are we seeing improvements? And yeah, I still think there's a lot to a lot to be done to continually mature and get better and understand it better. But here's one thing that I believe is still fundamentally lacking, and it goes back to why bad actors are still winning, and where security awareness training programs are still focused. And that is the social engineering, emotional and psychological susceptibility, and then your traditional like terms and definitions, and this is what an attack feels like. The way I like to think about it is, if you can train someone not just what an attack looks like, but what an attack feels like as well, then you're building in this, much deeper connection to, again, at the end of the day, it's almost skepticism. And when you look at AI and deepfake and all these other things, that is such an important skill set, to have these days. And so, yeah, I think, to hopefully try and answer your question, I think there's still a lot to be done to continually not just connect that training, those elements, but really understand the best modalities and the best approach to deliver that. Because at the end of the day, everyone has different sort of learning styles, learning needs, emotional profiles, susceptibilities. When we talk about emotional profiles, are they more susceptible to a greed-based attack versus, fear versus urgency versus, and so we've categorized 7 of them. And so part of the training is not just understanding where those opportunities, strengths and weaknesses are to supplement training, but how do you deliver that training in a way that connects to that individual in a meaningful way, such that they understand that, right? And so that's kind of the continual mission of ours is, understanding, gathering the data points and then really supplementing and personalizing training. And personalization is a whole nother, topic that we can, get into if it makes sense.
So with that, kind of looking back in your career, outside of our very security-centric view set that we've all kind of developed over the last, for me, nearly 30 years, was there something that occurred that kind of changed and informed your approach to human risk and culture that was kind of that aha moment on how to get people who are not security professionals to understand this?
I think it was probably not one or even two big aha moments. It was, for me, just, collecting all my experiences and all my knowledge and research over time to begin to just see things, whether or not it was in a different way than others, but at least for me, it was just, I moved this weight from, security awareness training, traditional, the definitions, over to the social engineering side. And I think it was slow, but all of a sudden I look back and I was like, wait a minute, without the social engineering element, bad actors wouldn't win. Most of these attacks, they wouldn't, trick their victims into divulging information or taking on an action. It is, at the end of the day, and just to make a point, 80% the social engineering, especially with AI threats, and maybe 20% understanding how to identify it. And whether that might be a bit gratuitous, but just to illustrate the point, I think it was just over time, investigating these attacks. And part of my role with Ningio is, I come up with the training concepts that we're doing each month, and so it forces me to really think about what are the current threats, what are our clients going through, what's happening in the industry, what's new, how do we articulate those points and convey them. And it just started to become more and more apparent that social engineering was just such an important focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the stresses of really, I mean, post COVID, you're like, to your point, like these stresses of, is it financial driven? Is it anger feelings driven? Like people that once you find you're able to social engineer your way in, it just seems like there's a lot more of those attack paths since the stressor of the world changing from COVID as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of research in this area, right? Looking at the not just social engineer, how bad actors are using social engineering, and this is probably more specific with phishing events that were that ended up luring individuals. And if you break that down even further, there's been studies done where they looked at 4 different trait clusters: high neuroticism, low neuroticism, high conscientiousness, low conscientiousness, and then we're able to figure out that those with certain trait clusters tended to be more susceptible than the control groups to certain emotional and psychological attacks. For example, high neuroticism is going to be more, trait cluster is going to be more susceptible to fear, greed, and urgency-based attacks, which is really interesting. And on the flip side, high conscientiousness, tend to be less susceptible to those types of attacks. And so, what we're trying to do is really understand the why, right? Why are those things happening? And then how do we personalize and address not just those, individuals, potential susceptibilities, but, how do we close the gap?
That's really interesting. That's a very different approach to what I've seen traditionally. And Josh, I'm assuming you probably Oh, you're muted, Josh. Sorry.
It's double secret, triple mute. I love the psychology behind it because ultimately, a lot of the things, it's all about what makes people tick. And understanding the underlying psychology helps you understand how people will react to certain instances, and whether it's a case of, there's someone who's extremely neurotic and they're going to react really, really fast to that high pressure, time bound thing, or if there's someone who's super skeptical, where you're going to have to lead them on, little bit of a carrot here, a little bit of a carrot there to get them to do what you want. And that's the same in, even software engineering. How do I get folks to do the thing I want to do? Where do I naturally place the button so they actually use the thing? So psychology is truly a deeply piece and part and parcel of what we do in cybersecurity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's shift from how you got here to how you lead now, right? Because there's that moment in every career where your experience turns into responsibility, right? If you're doing something right, that's just the inevitable path that you take. So you lead in a space where technology meets human behavior, as we've been discussing. So how is leading people in cybersecurity different from leading purely technical teams, like driven on that one particular path?
Sorry, I may have cut out a bit. How can you repeat the question?
So how is it different, like leading cybersecurity teams, different from leading those purely technical teams, where there's like a blend of personality types, blend of technical and non-technical people?
That's a great question. Our philosophy has always been, lowest common denominator, right? With approaching, but done so in a different light, right? Helping everyone maybe look at cybersecurity a little bit differently, looking at cybersecurity as, not a responsibility of a certain department or a certain individual, but ultimately everyone's responsibility. Trying to create a shift from cybersecurity being reactive to proactive. And I think when it comes to engaging, motivating, whether they're technical, non-technical, cybersecurity focused or not, seeing someone shift from reactive to maybe participating in the program when you're prompted, to proactive and actually participating in that education side and raising your hand and, hey, check this out. I just experienced this, and this is what I did about it. Or there's a lot of different ways, but there's a term called applied experiential learning in education, and especially e-learning. And the more we can shift from a program that is focused on just, are you complying, to are we showing a shift in demonstrating that applied experiential learning. we're actually applying those lessons and proactively participating, and that has a huge cultural impact as well. It allows us to actually, one by one, because culture happens no matter what, right? Whether it's intentional or not, you're going to have a culture in an organization. And I think from a security perspective, allowing your employees, individuals, associating a positive experience with cybersecurity awareness program can create this positive culture. I've always been of the mindset, there's going to be a lot of different opinions in the room that, security awareness training should never be punitive in nature, right? I failed a phishing test and now I immediately have to take this training. I think there's opportunities for, nudging and reminders along the way, right, to prevent, security events. But I do really think that it's important to create this positive connection to then drive that proactive behavior, no matter who you are, technical, non-technical, cybersecurity focus, to, engage, participate, and celebrate.
So, as someone who's, DoD for a giant portion of my career, and having taken the DoD cybersecurity awareness training, that was the same training for well over a decade, where, you have sweater vest Jeff coming in and telling you this is what you're supposed to do, and you have the person trying to drop you their mixtape, and the same person mugging you at the cafe every year. We say a lot about security culture. We talk about it all the time, but we don't rarely see it actually optimized and operationalized in organizations. So, what does real security culture change look like, and how have you done that as a leader?
I think it always starts with leadership, and I think at all different levels. And there's an MIT study. I can't remember the name of it, that was done some time ago, that actually looks at cybersecurity culture. If I can remember, I'll include it. But it was interesting, right? And it talked about the different sort of pillars required to influence, specifically cybersecurity culture, and leadership was one of the biggest. I think, of course, there's not just KPIs, but public KPIs, right? Understanding what are the goals, where do you stand, KPIs drive behavior, all that sort of stuff. But where I've seen, I think the greatest impact is when you have leadership at the very top making that statement: cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. I participated in it, demonstrating, lead through example. And it's embedded into the core tenets of the organization, at the root, right? When we talk about, if we have a core tenet that is, do right by our customers at all costs, it's, protect our customers' data and do right by them at all costs, right? It flows into just the core mission of the organization. That's where I've seen, I think, organizations do a really good job, small and large. One of our largest clients, they're top 10 on the Fortune 5, and they have this, I spend time with their CISO, and they have this incredible metrics spreadsheet, and dashboard, I should say, that they're capturing to understand what's going on at the macro and micro level, and have really embraced and built in these values into their organization. And I've you just see their results over time continue to get better and better and better, at least what they're tracking, right? So that's proof in the pudding.
Yeah. So that's funny, because I was actually going to ask you, leaders love metrics, but human behavior is so messy. And obviously, myself, I'm guilty of this as well. We've always been tracking progress through formulas in a spreadsheet and having these pretty dashboards. So where have you found success then in, I guess, maybe maturing those metrics and KPIs? Is there a secret formula that you've unlocked now based on this research and experience that you've had to make it better?
I think that's part of the consulting, process. Every organization is so different. I think there's definitely some core things that we find, just depending on where an organization is maturity wise. Um, I think once an organization does get into a bit more, mature, they're going beyond the metrics of, click-through rate and engagement and stuff through that, which is the very, very first step, traditional metrics, which I don't even really think tells a great story at the end of the day about a program. When we can actually start tweaking things that relate to personalization and proactive behaviors, I think those are going to be kind of the more important needle movers, at least that we've seen. And then presenting that data in front of the user, and again, trying to incentivize and create positive experiences. So it's not necessarily a specific formula, right? It's our wonderful client success and client experience teams working with organizations to try and find that right, where are you, how do we build on this, and what's working, what's not working. But at the end of the day, working toward those goals of, we know personalization has a much greater impact, right? The right content at the right time to the, with the right context through the right medium, like those are all things that do make an impact, and delivering that context. But yeah, designing kind of a program around helping individuals again feel empowered to even move the needle themselves for the security awareness program.
So, moving kind of from metrics, how do you balance empathy for users because they have all these psychological things that drive them to do the bad thing with accountability for the risk behaviors that they're going to do?
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is with AI powered threats, it's like, I feel like, and maybe I'm a softie, but you've got to have some more empathy. I mean, they are getting ridiculously difficult, right? Especially with your deep fakes and all that. And I think it's shared. I think we need to look at ourselves and understand, well, there's there's accountability, and I think there's clear violations of accountability that we can all agree upon. But that accountability also falls on the organization. Are we prepared? Are we giving the right tools? Right? Are we providing the right tools at the right time? Yeah. What can we do better if we see issues with accountability? And we've worked with organizations that had phishing as a part of employees' permanent record and annual review, and 3 strikes, you're out. Right? We've certainly, and we've had organizations on the other side as well that give tie bonuses to participating in security training, outside of their normal day to day, right? And that's not just the security team; that's everyone. Accumulating, cybersecurity credits. And so, I mean, it's a great question. I do think it's maybe less about accountability on the cybersecurity side and more of a broader, are there just general violations of accountability that, need to be addressed?
Yeah, I think that's such a fair thing to say, because accountability has always been like a dirty word in business, because there's potential repercussions and consequences, as is in real life, right? So yeah, I think that's really a fair statement to make on that one. So kind of like talking about the deep fakes and the AI acceleration and all the things that are going on that in my opinion lead to burnout and more of these crisis cycles that I think we're seeing across our industry, and others as well, but in cybersecurity, we're seeing it quite a bit. Has your leadership style changed at all as a result of these changes that have come?
I don't think so. Leadership style. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know if I can make a connection to any changes with leadership style.
Well, I think given that, you were just talking about accountability and, empathy, I think that makes sense that you probably haven't had many changes, but I wasn't sure if there was like anything, because I'm seeing on the teams that I've been talking to more burnout and more maybe that paranoia of the team. Like, I'm going to mess up. I'm as a security professional, it's going to look worse. That,
Yeah. And I appreciate you kind of expanding on that with that example. I do think there is a general tone, and it's not AI necessarily in the sense of cybersecurity.
Hmm.
It's AI in the sense of existential threats, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where there's absolutely been some changes in how I engage with my teams, especially those who are on the more creative side of this. And we don't have to go down the path of different philosophies on AI and the threat, but at the end of the day, there is a whole lot of emotional variability right now happening that I think is valid. Certainly valid, and certainly is impacting how individuals perceive their role, how individuals perceive their place in society, how individuals are even thinking about the near future and the long-term future. And I think, unequivocally, we all need to adapt, right? Leaders, and even as myself, right? I'm in that same bucket of grappling, right, with the fate of our world. We need to be empathetic for everyone else, I think, going through that.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
So I think we all can agree that leadership sets a direction, but when we get to execution, that's where strategy meets the reality, the rubber meets the road. It's where all of our controls and our training gets challenged. It's where the theories that we put out there collide with the live fire that is, the world today. So let's move from how we lead to how does the work actually get done. So in your area, human risk is kind of the big ball that you guys deal with. So when we say human risk, technically, what are we actually measuring? Is it behavior, exposure, susceptibility? Yes, something else?
Yeah. I think all humans are complex, right? So there's a certain element of complexity that we need to understand. We need to continue to understand even more, and continue to even adapt our strategies to address that. And so when we talk about human risk, it is a lot of things, right? It's behavior, it's trends, it's changing over time, it's telemetry, not just in the security awareness space, but telemetry with other things in the environment. It's culture. It's all these things. There's so much you can measure, but at a certain point, measuring and fine tuning becomes, there's diminishing returns. It becomes ineffective. It's just, data overload. And so I do believe, especially with how, I am seeing a shift in this industry, the more that we can, and there's a lot of different organizations taking a lot of different, approaches, or a lot of different vendors taking a lot of different approaches. But in my mind, I think less is more, and really focusing on the quality of those signals, and the adaptations to see how you can improve those signals, before we move on to expanding and converging the entire universe of data points and telemetry. And so there's we personally have seen a lot of frustration, I think, in this environment with organizations trying to consolidate, all these data points and understand the story that it's telling them, and then about human risk specifically, and then trying to achieve value, extract value out of those data points. And then what do we do about it, right? Even if it tells the story of this individual is X, percent riskier than this individual, and this department, struggles with, this area. It's what do we do about it, which, in my mind is one of the hardest things. And not just what do we do about it, but after we've done it, is it effective? And so that's where, our approach really is around, kind of that, human emotional and psychological susceptibilities, figuring out the best ways to measure those strengths and weaknesses, and apply the a variety and different personalized interventions, and understand how it's working, and what needs to be continually shifted. And so, yeah, anyways, it's been interesting to see the industry, sort of mature, get stuck, and then, different, especially with AI, things are changing so rapidly. AI opening up, even new pathways to do new and interesting things. And, I think one of the greatest opportunities that we have now is to really focus in on this personalization side. And it's almost become a built-in expectation, right? When you look at interacting with, your GPTs, personalization is built in. It's understanding you, getting to know you better and better. And so, and there's tons of studies being done on one of the most effective, learning modalities. It's that, one-on-one training, one-on-one, learning experiences are by far the best and most effective, deliver the most effective outcomes. And so I think, with AI, it gives us a massive opportunity to, really start to zero in and, do more along that path of personalization, understanding the individual, and supporting those strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and like you mentioned the signals and this data that now we're exposed to more of this data now. I mean, the data problem is it's just exploding everywhere. So how do you integrate this human risk data into that broader risk management and security operational workflows?
Yeah, it varies. We believe that, and this is just through our experience, that the more we can measure behaviors within a single environment, right, without having to pipe in a bunch of other data, and the more we can understand the quality of that data, and take actions holistically within that, the better outcomes we're able to drive. I also believe that security awareness training, or even human risk management, it's, as much as I'd love it to be, it's not necessarily the center of the security stack universe, right? And I think, although, yeah, there's an opportunity to play a much larger role, and I am excited to see where that goes, how that happens, and how we can, continue to pave the way to play that role. But I still don't believe, there's we're going to be the center of that universe. I think the more we can understand the data that we're delivering, within our ecosystem, and how we can hand that off to wherever that center of the universe is, to provide meaningful, meaningful telemetry in the rest of the stack, I think there's going to be a lot of value in that.
So you did mention the security stack. So where do traditional security stacks fail to account for the human layer, and where are they doing exceedingly well in accounting for the human layer?
Um, Yeah, that's again, I can think of examples of varying levels of these examples, just with different organizations. Um, I think organizations that are much better prepared to synthesize their data in general, right? Those organizations that, and no matter how advanced their security program is, their security stack, even outside security awareness training, there are just some organizations that are prepared to collect, synthesize, and understand their data. They tend to be a bit more prepared to also understand those deeper layers, such as human risk and stuff like that. When they can start introducing those elements. Um, I do think that, the way I'm thinking about security awareness and human risk management is probably a bit further beyond what the market is ready to buy now. And I'm hoping I have it right. I'm not saying I have it right, but I think there's also a mindset and an expectation of, this is what security awareness and human risk management looks like. And so this is the peg that I need to, fit within my organization. And I do think that there is a lot of, that the evolution that I'm seeing, the evolution that I'm trying to drive, I think is starting to proliferate, more and more and more, and the conversations are becoming more engaging. But that doesn't mean the budget is ready to invest in those paths, and so we're really looking out for it. And another side of it is, um, just AI is changing the game, right? I mean, how many times have you heard SaaS is dead? With AI, I can't tell you how many subscriptions
Yeah.
I've canceled and built my own app. It's so there's like we need to be agile. On that same note, even within our own engineering teams, right, building out our product, we recently had a 20 days, a minor feature, but in 20 days we had concept to prototype to PRD to development, to develop and launch into production. And it was big enough, right? That was like kind of wild to see, right? It was a massive feature, but it was like, yeah, we can move much faster. And I do think that we are going to start seeing more of that, right? On the competitive level, we know we need to be agile, and to remain competitive, we need to be quick. Um, but at the same time, that's exciting, because I think what's going to happen with that is we will start to see this education even move faster and faster, and CISOs kind of see like what's possible out there in a real tangible way, which wasn't tangible before. When maybe we'd have these hypothetical conversations of where the industry is heading. It's like, we can show you, and let's see how this works in your organization. Hey, do you want to participate in our, beta testing or proof of concept testing with this? So that's been, I think, really neat and exciting. I think we'll accelerate, this maturity path.
Yeah, I kind of want to pull on that thread a bit with this innovation that you see, this future that you see and that you're developing. So if you could, if you had to design a modern human risk program from scratch for the future today, like don't give away any secrets of secret sauce stuff, of course, please. Like, what are the first three technical components that you would stand up for building for that future that you're seeing now?
Hmm. Um, if I were to fundamentally, break down, I think the basis to any security awareness program that needs to be done right, really with anything, there's three layers. There's data, right, and the quality of that data. There's the personalization, which if you have good quality data and you know what to do with it, then you can personalize. And then there is the risk articulation, action, and efficacy, right? It's okay. We have really good data going on in our environment. We understand what's happening with individuals' behavior. We have a way to synthesize that data and deliver really good personalized strategies, right content, right time, right context, right medium, all that stuff, right time. And then through that, we have really good tracking to be able to understand real time, what's going on in my environment. Are these interventions, working? And at the end of the day, what's the value of this thing I'm paying for? It's in the data, right? How am I more secure? Am I less secure? Where are my hotspots? Still, and so fundamentally, it's super basic, right? It's probably nothing different than any other organization, I'd say, other than just our ability to execute with AI, our ability to execute with looking at the data, being able to personalize real quickly, real rapidly, generate what that personalization looks like, and then synthesize all that data to see how it's impacting our organization. Is that a fair answer? It's a little bit vague, but I think those are the cornerstones that I think
it has to be vague a bit. I mean, you have to keep some things mysterious for what's coming out so people can keep an eye on your product. So
that's right. Stay tuned, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't believe we're already quickly coming up on the end here. So, what we do is we always end Criticality Live with a set of these core questions to kind of give our audience this practical, take it with you insights. So, the first question that I would like to ask you for this is, I think it's a fun one. If you could fix one thing about cybersecurity industry overnight, what would it be?
Gosh, one thing. I think communication and openness and sharing, right? And I know that's scary, and I know I think we've made some progress in that, but learning from each other in more meaningful ways. I mean, there are people have gone through experiences, and people's brains are much smarter than my brain. I think if we can all come together and share experiences in meaningful ways, learn from each other, and work together to create, better standards, I think the industry would be, greater as a whole. And I have seen progress there, to some degree. But then there's also this, especially if there's been an event, there's investors involved, there's other things involved that I get it, right? Sometimes it doesn't make sense to be terribly open, but that would be it.
All right, I am known for liking an unpopular opinion or two. What is one practice, it could be technical or cultural, that you wish organizations would just stop doing altogether as of like yesterday?
I said it earlier. It's punitive training. So someone takes on a bad behavior, fails a phishing test, making that punitive. I know it's a bit biased within my industry, but I just really think that creates a negative context and oftentimes hurts a program.
Yeah, I've seen it come back to bite teams. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I am absolutely generally against phishing tests for those very reasons. So I happen to agree with you this time.
Oh, all right, awesome. We're starting a club. Let's see if we can expand this thing.
For our listeners who want to follow your work or reach out, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, great way. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with you. Also, my email address. Reach out to me directly at Ningio, and that is make it easy. I have my first initial last name, but let's just go with Matt at ningio.com. NINJIO.com.
Perfect.
All right. Before we let you go, do you have any final thoughts? You want to leave the audience with something, or where they might be able to see you? I'm assuming you're going to be at RSA.
Yeah, definitely going to be at RSA. Come stop by our booth. Gosh, I'm not prepared to give you a booth number right at this time, but yeah, look us up in the directory. Would love to have a chat. Would love to hear your opinion on some of the things that I've said, where you think the industry is going. What is one thing you'd change? Right, I'd love to hear from you. So, anyways, thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure chatting with y'all, and yeah, appreciate the time spent together.
Yeah, thank you. That's a wrap on our episode of Criticality Live. Huge thanks to our guest, Matt Lindley, for being here with us today. And an even bigger thanks to you and being a part of this growing community of leaders who are done with the buzzwords and are ready for real conversations. If you got value out of today's episode, please hit that follow button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And please drop us a review here on LinkedIn, Spotify, or on the On Demand YouTube channel. It helps us far more than you know. And of course, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Secure Nation, for powering this conversation. They're helping organizations defend smarter, respond faster, and make cybersecurity something that actually works. So please go check them out. This has been Criticality Live, where we cut through the noise and get to what really matters. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.